didn't hear about Nelson first. I heard about some other songs that Sandy had written because she came to the school just to see if she could speak to the music teacher and possibly interest me in some of the songs that she'd written. And I certainly was very interested in the songs that she'd written after I heard them. And at one of our little meetings, she asked if she could play and sing Nelson because she had just written it and just wanted to know what I thought about that one too. And of course I got very excited about what she had done with the music and the songwriting, and the story behind Nelson was all very exciting to hear firsthand. Okay, so for me, I'm always looking at ways to use things in the classroom specifically. And with Nelson, the story itself lends itself to talking about emotion in music and how emotion can be portrayed through the sounds of the instruments, the rhythm, the dynamics that are used, and I kind of used it for the students to listen and explore the things that they heard and explain how emotion changed throughout the story of Nelson. They were given a little questionnaire type of thing for me to determine whether they actually heard changes in emotion, and I asked them to show me what Nelson might look like. I also gave students different sections of the story to depict on paper and asked them what emotion at that particular point in the story was being used and how was it being shown through the music. Of course, the words are also a given way for them to understand emotion, but I specifically wanted to know if they could also tell me how the music expressed that emotion as well. Well, they loved the song. They liked to hear it over and over again. And if they were working on a particular page or part of the story that I had assigned to them, of course they'd want to hear that again. And then also we'd have to talk about some of the different changes in the moods that we were listening to and how that happened with dynamics and rhythm and intensity of the sound kind of thing. Okay, so initially, like I said, I was using it as a tool to show that music can evoke mood. And then the next step, I think, was for me to take it a little bit further and have the students explore sounds and instruments that that they have at their disposal in the classroom, and how they could use sounds to represent either characters in the story or the things that were going on in the story or the mood and the emotion that was being portrayed at any given time. And so that's what we did just most recently. The students were asked to kind of define the timbre of some of the instruments that they were experimenting with, and classify it, whether it was a happy kind of sound, or they could make it into a happy kind of sound, or was that an instrument that would provide them with the opportunity to show a sad situation, as well as using the instruments rhythmically to again enhance a happy kind of sound. They also were able to use their voices throughout the story, because when we told the story and they used the instruments, for instance, the sigh, they actually used their voice to go, oh, like this, whenever there was a sad thing going on as well. So it was a great example of how you can use instruments to, again, tell the story. When we were discussing some of the different things that they had to portray that were going on in the story, like when the tears grew into rivers, using the xylophone and just running the mallets up and down the xylophone just created that sense of a wave, of river of tears kind of thing. So that's an example of how they could decide, you know, which instrument would be appropriate for a specific sound or a specific situation that was going on in the story. I think a single finger cymbal was used for a single lonely kind of person sound. And then they all used their instruments when the whole town was involved in a situation, so that there was a lot of noise. The tapping of the rhythm instruments for Nelson working on his toys and whatnot. All of those sounds worked really well, and the students were able to make those decisions and correctly implement them into the storytelling that they did with their voice and the instruments, and presented it to the grade 1s at our school. With such an emphasis on social injustices and how in the school system we can address that, anything that's musical that may address a social injustice or talk about anything that has to do with how we can create a better climate within the school, I'd certainly be interested in seeing how I could implement it. And because of course it's a song, I know the kids would love it right away because they just love these kinds of things, and it addresses a very important issue that we're all trying to deal with. Oh, definitely, definitely, because it's easy for kids to listen to. It's easy for them to understand, I think, even although they may not initially understand what it is they're listening to or what they're learning through the story and the song. But I think kids just innately do get that there's a deeper sense of meaning behind the story and the song. I think they understand that what they're listening to is something pretty important to be aware of. Well, that is probably the first song that Sandy had introduced me to, and that was the one that I picked up right away on and used with students in a performance situation where students were singing it, but we had students also acting it out. And again, it is a song that kids can connect with because they can identify with the playground situation. They can identify with times when they have seen people being hurt on the playground or feeling lonely on the playground, or they themselves have maybe not had a friend to play with. So again, it's a song that kids can really relate to and connect with. So while a group of students were singing the song, it was being acted out on the stage, and I think it turned into a very moving experience for the students, again, because they could connect so well with it, but also I think the parents appreciate the students having that connection with something that's so important too. So it was well received by students and by the audience, parents. And after the performance, the students were very, very excited about knowing that Sandy was in the audience and meeting her and knowing that that's who wrote this song. And again, another deep connection there. It means even more to them when they can see the person who actually wrote the song and have that person in the audience watching too. Well, actually, I don't think a lot of kids realize they're even doing it, because a lot of kids, it just seems to, unfortunately, be almost normal for them. And that's a shame. That's a real shame. So we have to, again, we have to really work on it. We have to really make them aware. We have to make them feel sympathy and empathy, and we have to make them think that other people have feelings too, and that they need to just be really aware and careful how they treat other people. And again, think about how they'd feel if they were being treated the way they are treating somebody else. So there is a lot of things that we need to work on. I think Nelson creates a huge awareness towards that, and again, building on it and repeating the story and approaching it again from various angles, whether you're just going to talk about the story itself or whether you're going to approach it through the music. You know, have it as a listening activity or a hands-on activity or just a story time activity. There's so many different ways to approach it. And again, approaching it on different levels. Again, just the kids hear it again and they hear the message again. They hear the message again another way. And I think that's important for kids, just to never let go of that message. Because we all need to really work on stamping out, thumping out bullying. So I think the students, as they think about who Nelson might be, because Nelson isn't actually a picture. Nelson is just a portion of a person. So they're able to imagine what Nelson might look like. And so that is certainly, again, something that gives them thought. They have to try and figure out what this body looks like, and if they then can make it something that's quite normal to them, then I think they're making a good connection that Nelson could be anybody, and then I think it's one of those aha moments where they go, whoa, this might be just that person in my class that's got longer legs than me, or this might be that person in my class that we make fun of because their hair is big, or, you know, if they can imagine that Nelson is just an everyday person, then again, that message that we have to treat each other, all of us, no matter what we look like, that message is hitting home to them. Our community is very culturally diverse, and the story of Nelson, when it's introduced to the students, could represent any of those cultures. So the students can easily relate to Nelson because they will make Nelson one of their own.